right, I'm here with Dr. Bruce McCarl, Nobel laureate, Regents professor and distinguished professor of agricultural economics at Texas A&M, and to talk about his work. I understand you're a contributor to the IPCC on effects, adaptation, and mitigation, and we're just hoping you could tell us about kind of the latest IPCC report in those areas, just in terms of for policymakers and the question of what can or should be done.
Yeah, the real question which the IPCC is starting increasingly to address is, first, what kind of climate change issues are virtually inevitable that we'll see, and then what kinds of ways can we address them. Up till now, an awful lot of the dialogue has been about mitigation, and there what we do is talk about reducing greenhouse gases, and we talk about important roles from deforestation and agriculture and changing the way we use energy, and also capturing emissions from energy and sequestering them somehow in the soil. And lately we've been talking a little bit about geoengineering as a way of avoiding climate change. But the other issue is that in the next 25 years, just about no matter what we do on the mitigation front, we're going to get about a degree Celsius of temperature increase. And in the next 75 years, we're probably in for 2 to 4 degrees Celsius of temperature increase. And the real question, if you're an agriculturalist, is how do we mitigate that? How can we continue to produce food effectively in a 1 to 2 to 4 degree warmer world?
And isn't that adaptation? I mean, that's kind of what adaptation is, whereas mitigation is reducing the effects that we can, the stuff that's not in the pipeline. But
what adaptation really refers to is reducing the detrimental effects and exploiting the opportunities when it's warmer and the climate has been altered without affecting what's going on in the climate. So it's wearing sunscreen kind of solutions, or
building a seawall,
crops, building seawalls, managing water systems
versus
better.
mitigation.
Mitigation is how we reduce the greenhouse gas releases from society and or enhance the amount that's taken out of the air through sequestration activities, such as growing trees, which are 50% carbon, or storing carbon in the soils, or capturing emissions as they're coming out of power plant smokestack and injecting them into aquifers or salt mines or things like that.
And because it's such a global question, you mentioned that how, really in terms of India, China, and developing countries, the challenge for them to not develop their economies like we did, which is kind of through coal and through kind of being dirty first and then cleaning up. But,
well, yeah, certainly right now they can come to where we are, but our emissions are roughly 20 tons of carbon dioxide per person per year. Right now, China says about 6. India, I think, is closer to 4. This is the largest, China's the largest emitter in the world, but it's because they have so many people than we do. And as income grows in China, what we've seen, and this is detailed in the mitigation report, is that population and income are both driving emissions up quite rapidly, but energy efficiency is driving them down some, and on balance they're going up quite fast. And the real issue is, how can those countries grow to the income and population levels we expect them to reach without greatly expanding their emissions? We expect emissions to more than double if we continue going on as business as usual, and there's actually the potential to raise the greenhouse gas content of the atmosphere by almost a factor of 5 or 6.
Yeah, and we've seen that in the forum. What happens, in terms of quintupling pre-industrial, CO2 and the impacts of that. So, in terms of the IPCC, I know they're talking about. Don't they assume, in terms of mitigation, like, okay, well, here's the pathways that we can choose. Here's the different options available. In terms of mitigation, don't they kind of assume that a global carbon price is in there?
Well, they have a scenario which is the business as usual scenario that assumes we make some efforts but not a great deal.
Is that RCP 8.5?
8.5, and just as a side note, we had a similar one to that in the 2007 report. In the 2008 report, that business as usual is actually worse than it was in the 2007 report because we've been emitting at a rate faster than we contemplated in 2007.
But those lower ones, the 2.5, the 4 point, even I think the 6 assumes that a carbon price is incorporated.
The two, every one of them assumes carbon management. There's not really a single golden bullet that's the carbon price. There's fuel switching, there's technology development, there's increased sequestration, more reliance on biofuel or renewable type fuels. There's all these different things, and we're going to need to use each and every one, perhaps even improve nuclear power in order to reach our goals. We expect, say, in Texas to go from, I think it's 30 to 50 million people by 2050.
Yeah.
And when you look at what's happened historically, electricity use goes up faster than the rate of population growth. Liquid fuels, gasoline, goes up at the rate of population growth. Well, we need to figure out how to accommodate that growth without greatly increasing emissions.
And isn't the tough issue how to incentivize that development? I mean, is it governments telling, pointing fingers? Is it, I mean, that's the tough issue, right?
Yeah, I'm trained as an economist, and in economic terms, we call this an externality. People are releasing greenhouse gases not because they want to, but as a byproduct of the things that they do. And in their decisions on what different technologies cost, they don't factor in the cost potentially of the greenhouse gases being emitted.
Negative externalities.
2 or 3 years ago, there were 23 new coal-fired power plants proposed for Texas. And we're going to need a lot more of those kinds of things to handle all these more people by 2050. And it takes a long time to get those things into place. What an economist says is if we charge those power plants for emitting carbon, then those power plants are going to work really hard to invent new ways to reduce more carbon. We did this with the acid rain or sulfur dioxide program in the U.S., and while for various reasons it no longer exists, in the 10 years it did, the price was much cheaper than people initially assumed it would be. We were able to cut emissions back by 50% in like a 10-year period, and we just about eliminated the acid rain problem. An awful lot of the...
And it was those plant managers coming up with their own solutions and kind of innovating to deal with that.
Yeah, when a plant manager sees something that costs them money, they try to reduce that cost. And so by putting a price on carbon, we reflect the damages it might be doing, and we give people an incentive to innovate to greatly reduce the emissions.
Well, thank you for your time, and your voice is welcome on Climate Change National Forum always.
Very good.
Well, I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.